All right, let's begin.
Welcome everyone to the Senate availability for press and for the public. We want to welcome particularly those who are watching us over the internet. We invite your questions, so please let us know of your concerns. We'll try to address them here today. We'll go right. It's day 12 of the legislative session. Things are moving right along. We've passed quite a few bills out of the Senate over to the House, and some have come back, passed by the House, and I have signed them, and they're on their way to the governor for his signature. And so things are moving right along. We'll, I don't know, it's been a little bit slow as far as controversy is concerned, but we'll take questions from the press. Michelle?
Senator Bramble, could you talk about the bill you'd like to open to repeal the guest worker program? How far we got on seeking that waiver from the federal government?
Yeah, thank you for the question. In 2011, as you recall, we passed House Bill 116, which was intended to address the challenges of undocumented individuals in the state of Utah, from a healthcare, education, and all the challenges. But it was predicated on getting a federal waiver. And we've been now through 3 attorneys general from the time that bill was passed. I've personally, as a representative of both the state of Utah and representing the National Conference of State Legislatures, have had discussions with the administration. And at the time we passed the bill, we said we were not looking for a legal showdown with the federal government, but rather wanted to be one of the laboratories of democracy to put forward a practical solution at the state level for dealing with the challenges, particularly with, if you look at education, the Supreme Court has held that a state can't ask the immigration status of an individual. With healthcare, with federal laws that say that we have to provide emergency medical treatment, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, EMTALA, these things put some real burdens on states, and so we tried to address it, the challenges, but to do so would require federal waiver because of federal preemption. But we said at the time, if a waiver wasn't forthcoming, that ultimately we may have to repeal the bill. Well, the bill has been in place now for 5 years. It doesn't appear that we're getting a waiver. If we don't repeal the bill, then the Tax Commission would be obligated to change their systems. It would be a very costly proposition to have them gear up, and the cost would have been borne by new individuals coming into the system paying taxes, because undocumented individuals can't legally pay taxes, income taxes in the state of Utah. Well, without those individuals coming out of the shadows and paying income taxes and such, it would simply be a cost, several $1 million, to establish the administrative side of House Bill 116, but we can't implement it without the federal waiver. We knew that going in. We're not getting a waiver. The recommendation has been that we now repeal the bill.
How close did we get to getting a waiver, or how many entreaties were made to do that?
You'd have to ask others. I can speak to my own communications with the office, forget the name of the office in the White House, but I know that I've actually, when different times I've been in D.C., I've had the opportunity to speak with various administration officials, including some of the highest ranking officials in the administration, but there's been no action taken. So how far has the state gone? You'd have to ask others, but it's apparent that the administration has no interest in granting a waiver.
Who was charged with taking that up and trying to obtain that waiver? Was there someone
specific? At the time, Attorney General Shurtleff was leading the charge with, I believe it was Attorney General Holder was in the administration in Washington at the time.
Would it have had to have been an executive waiver, or could Congress have done something as well?
Great question.
It's kind of open-ended, right?
Well, this president has issued a couple of executive orders on undocumented individuals, dreamers and such, so Could the president have done it, or would it have taken congressional action? That's a question for others.
But under,
And if the president had done it, is it legal? You know, that would have to be challenged, go to the Supreme Court.
the Utah law just said some sort of federal waiver or approval. It didn't specify.
Well, here's the issue. Historically, workforce, the labor force, was up to the states to be involved in. Naturalization or granting citizenship was a function of the federal government. And the Constitution references the role of the federal government in naturalization. Congress has passed statutes taking upon themselves sole responsibility for immigration. So the constitutionality in terms of 116 was a question of federal supremacy, not a constitutional issue based on federal preemption or federal supremacy, not based on a specific provision in the Constitution that would prohibit a state per se from dealing with the workforce in our borders.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, none of the members of the delegation ever sponsored legislation that would have
No.
gotten the waiver. Did they ever intervene or make contact with the administration to try to advocate for a waiver that you know of?
I have their numbers if you'd like to call them.
I can call you. Do you want to give me their numbers?
Yeah, can we do it on camera?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I know that we've, in various meetings, we've talked with our federal delegation on this issue.
Did it, I mean, I think maybe what Michelle is getting at, I guess what I'll just ask is, was this always just, hey, it would be nice if we could get a waiver, and they'd say, okay, you know?
Well,
or did it actually get to nuts and
look,
bolts? Here's
we knew-
something on paper that we...
We knew going in, there's not an application process for a waiver, okay? But then many things we do, we have to seek approval from Washington that there may not be a specific process. So in this case, we were forging some new territory.
I know that when this was also passed with the package of the Utah Compact. There were more there were law enforcement aspects as well, and a federal judge struck down some key provisions of that. And now that this program seems to not be going forward either, I'm wondering, was the Utah Compact kind of more of a hype and promise than any actual? It sounds like we haven't really had anything achievable come out of that.
Well, that's an interesting way to spin it, but the passage of House Bill 116 was based on the principles of the Utah Compact. It was based on the principles of 50 laboratories of democracy trying to solve problems that are unique to our states. And in this case, we made a conscious decision that we were not looking for a legal showdown with the administration, but rather putting Utah forward with a statutory framework that if the federal government would give us the authority, we could then we could then move forward with call it a pilot program.
Any other questions on the immigration repeal?
Look, final comment. We originally we put, I believe, a 3-year delayed effective date for 3 years. We then extended that to 2017. When we extended it, we said if we in the presentation on the floor, if you go back and look at the audio, I believe you'll find that when I presented that, I made it clear to my colleagues that we were asking for support for an extension of the provisions of what was House Bill 116, but that if we didn't get it, then in this session, we would then bring forward legislation that would repeal it. So this isn't a new kind of just out of nowhere. This is something that we knew going in that it was a bit of a long shot to get the federal waiver. We were hoping that the federal government would look at it and say that is a rational approach to the challenges that are faced. That hasn't happened, and so the decision has been made that we put forward a repeal.
Can I ask, the time when this was passed, this was obviously a major hot topic of discussion around the country. It hasn't been lately. Can you kind of comment on how you see the urgency of addressing this? Because some people have said that the illegal immigration levels have dropped off in recent years, and it hasn't been at the forefront of issues that other state legislators are tackling right now.
Have you been watching the presidential debates on the Republican side of the aisle?
Right, I'm just talking about state houses.
Well, I think state houses, we still have the same challenges that we are obligated to provide free and equal public education to all children, whether or not they have legal status. We can't even ask that question. We're still obligated to pay the costs of medical care at emergency rooms through federal law called EMTALA. We still have the challenges with our criminal justice system. None of those problems have evaporated. They're still there. And it is the role of the federal government to address it. The reason we brought forward 116 is because the federal government has been an abject failure in dealing with immigration. To those who regularly use the amnesty defense, you can't do anything because it's amnesty. Well, by doing nothing, that's de facto amnesty. At least in this bill, it imposed significant penalties, required background checks, it required a number of things that would at least bring a rational structure to the challenges we face. But so has it gone away? No. With the downturn in the economy, our workforce ebbs and flows, but the underlying challenges are still there. The challenges of individuals that have criminal backgrounds that have illegally come into the country are still there. The challenges with education and all the other issues that 116 was intended to at least address in some fashion they still exist.
From a practical standpoint, this may be a dumb question, but there's 116 was not being enforced, right? I mean, there's nothing that's going to change on the ground with the repeal.
It couldn't be enforced because it had a delayed effective date.
Right, but we weren't doing background checks and we weren't doing tests.
The entire 116 had a
delayed
effective date.
Pieces of it weren't implemented.
So if that's a dumb question, what dumb answer shall I give you?
Yeah, I think you just gave it.
Any other issues you'd like? Questions from the press? Anybody from our questions from our viewers on the internet?
Yeah, we have
Kirsten.
a couple today.
Okay. Let's address those. We have Senator Okerlund, Senator Knudsen, and Senator Main with us.
You don't want to talk about the other bill file open, the burning questions of joint tenancy amendments?
Please go.
That'll make front page.
That's
Senator
right.
Randall.
I think we're at 1,237 bills that have been filed that we broke in the record.
Yes.
We broke the record.
Yes.
Are you guys happy with that?
There's some things we're not proud of, that's for sure.
But we'll see the process go forward. We'll have those bills looked at and try to get them through committees, the good ones, and go through the process. Deal with as many as we can that are good ideas. And hopefully we get some good things out of it. But it's getting a lot tougher. We need more bills.
Questions?
Yes, this one comes from Twitter, from basically Joe. He says, what is the plan for growth in southern Utah?
Okay. Is that, well, I guess southern Utah, meaning St. George, Senator Okerlund, you're down that way. You want to talk about growth and the plans for growth?
Yeah, the Washington County area has been the biggest area of the southern part of the state to grow, and we expect that to continue. During the recession, that growth slowed down considerably, but I was told yesterday that they're right back up to pre-recession levels down there. Lots of growth, lots of building. So I think we expect that's going to continue, just like the growth along the Wasatch Front. We've got a plan for it. We've got to get infrastructure in place. We've got to deal with water issues and transportation issues, all those things, schools, how we educate our children. We're going to have to deal with all of those issues as we see the state continue to grow. We're a place that is going to grow. We know that. So we're just going to have to deal with all of those issues that growth brings with it, and we're diligently working on how to do that.
Thank you for that question. Great question.
Awesome. We have one more. I'll give you one guess who it comes from.
Cache Valley.
It may just be. Jason Williams wants to know, will there be continued talk between Utah and the feds on immigration, or is this the end of it?
Senator Bramble?
Well, as I indicated to a previous question, the problems haven't gone away. They haven't diminished. We're still faced with the same challenges. If the federal government doesn't give Utah a waiver, then we need to ramp up the pressure on Congress to actually do its job and to address the issue. Because at some point, we've got to find a solution.
Why not then just push that back another couple of years for implementation rather than repeal it?
Well, I guess that's one of the alternatives, but it does not appear that there's any appetite. We had a Republican administration when we passed the bill. We've had well, no, we didn't. It's been under the Obama administration, but we've had Republican Congress at least now, and we've had both majority Democrats in Congress and a majority of Republicans in Congress that haven't chosen to address it. So.
It wouldn't be worth waiting for a new administration, new president, see what's there.
That'll be up to 103 other legislators when I put forward the repeal.
I guess President Trump doesn't really like the immigrants, does he?
Has there been any appetite?
Which country are you referring to?
Is there any appetite to force this in court by somehow just repealing that section that requires the waiver, and assuming there'd be a pretty quick...
No, that was never part of the proposal.
Is that something up for consideration now, though? I mean, with public lands, with marijuana, we could eventually face similar...
Other than you bringing it forward, that's not been a...
Nobody has...
That's not been a topic of discussion.
Do you know why on this particular issue we don't want to force that legal battle, but on others we do?
It's a great question.
I think it's the priority of the time.
Vote Michelle. Vote Michelle.
If there's no other questions.
We actually have one more.
All right, great.
Actually, two more quick ones. Somebody on Twitter wants to know who your favorite reporter is.
Clark Kent.
Read the whole tweet, Kirsten. Read the whole tweet.
Okay. Should I reveal the source?
Just read the tweet. I think that reveals the source.
Who's your favorite reporter? It's Brian Grimmett, right?
If he says so.
Depends on the day.
Is this where you ask who's Brian Grimmett?
He's in this room. Just kidding. And the last question is, why are you wearing red today?
Oh, that's right.
Senator
It's
Oakland.
National Heart Awareness Day, and we encouraged everybody to wear red to recognize the efforts of the American Heart Association, the State of Heart Association, and stroke. So we're seeing a lot of red on the Capitol today, and that's why.
And we're glad to have you with us still, Senator.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just to show the diversity of thoughts and actions, some people have taken that to an extreme length.
Will anybody be taking Senator Van Tassel up on his offer?
Well, I do want to point out that we've also decided that both skinny and fat red and black striped ties are appropriate.
Yeah.
That's right, diversity.
We already asked you your Super Bowl predictions. I think you said Green Bay. Anyone want to take a stab?
The Bears?
The Bears. You got the Packers. You got the
I always pick the underdog. I'm going to say Denver's going to squeak this out right in the end. Probably an interception. The defense winning it for them.
There you go.
I'd concur with that. I'd say Denver.
I'd like to say something too. We are
Senator
working
Maine.
so efficiently in the committees and on the floor. When we go to committees, the senators are prepared. We know the legislation before we get there. Obviously, we study it, and it seems to me we're really flowing really well in our committees, and that helps us on the floor. So when we vote, they know the legislation. And sometimes it seems a little fast on the floor. That's because they're prepared and they've looked at it, so they know what they're voting for. And if they have questions, it's just something that's come up, they're pretty prepared bunch down there, so I'm proud of them, and I think everything's moving well.
Thanks, Senator May. All right, that'll end our press availability, and thank you for watching us on the internet. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
Executive votes at 4:45 right now.